Welcome back. It's the Sports Hour here on Flow FM, and it's time to join Eddie Dadds, our world sports expert. He's back in Australia. A big welcome to you, Eddie. Welcome home. How you doing?
Thanks, Alice. It's great to be back. Come from sort of minus 20 degrees over in Canada over to the central west of New South Wales, where it's about 35 and beautifully sunny. So trying to adjust to that. NRL's back. F1's back. Golf's back. It's an absolutely cracking time of the year, Alice. I'm loving it out here.
Now, Eddie, as you know, we're a regional broadcaster, and you're in regional New South Wales right now, as you say. So tell us what you're getting up to over there.
Out on my partner's farm out here in Grenfell, New South Wales. It's an absolutely beautiful part of the world. We've got the Henry Hunt grew up just down the road, the opener for South Australia. So there's a good sporting culture over here in Grenfell. They love their rugby. Not so much AFL out here, Alice. I'm a bit of an outsider with the AFL stuff, but it's an absolutely beautiful part of the world.
We'll start over in America, where in the NBA we had a bit of a flare-up in a game recently which involved Kevin Durant. So we won't talk too much about the basketball itself. We've got Dan Crouch for that. But why don't you tell us about this ruckus that went on?
Yeah, this is an absolute cracker that unfolded this morning, Alice. So it was the Phoenix Suns against the Dallas Mavericks. Those switched on NBA watchers will realise that's Kyrie Irving on his new team, the Dallas Mavericks, versus Kevin Durant on his new team, the Phoenix Suns. The two of those guys, obviously teammates at the Brooklyn Nets about 3 weeks ago. So there was already some drama sort of around that. And Luka Doncic, the Mavericks superstar, missed a game-tying layup in the final second. Devin Booker, who's one of the Suns' premier players, wasn't hesitant to let him know about it, Ellis. You would have absolutely loved it. It was right up your alley. Doncic was sort of hunched over, looking really upset at the end of the game. Devin Booker comes in, has a few words in his ear, and it all sort of kicked off from there. It was absolutely fantastic. I, for one, Ellis, would absolutely love to see these two teams take on each other in the playoffs. Last year, obviously, the Mavericks took down the Suns in one of the most infamous Game 7s of all time. They absolutely destroyed them. Luka Doncic seems to have the wood over Devin Booker, but yeah, this added element of having Kevin Durant and Chris Paul and Kyrie Irving on these two teams as well just makes it an absolutely fascinating showdown. I'm not sure if the NBA's ratings are going that well over in the US, but in terms of pure interest levels for those diehards like me, it's hard to think of a more interesting time in the NBA. There's literally about 15 teams that could potentially win the title from here. So it's an absolutely great time to be an NBA fan.
Well, it's equally as intriguing right now in motorsport, Eddie. Let's talk about the Bahrain Gran Prix. Maclaren not having the best time of it, despite their reputation. There's a fair bit to unpack here. Eddie, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is great, Alice. I've been hanging out for the new F1 season to start. Obviously, we had season 5 of Drive to Survive on Netflix dropped early last month, so there's an absolute smorgasbord of F1 content to get through. The Bahrain Grand Prix overnight was one of the more fascinating openings to an F1 season that I can remember, Ellis, because there are storylines everywhere now. At the top of the grid, Red Bull were dominant as ever. They won the Constructors and the Drivers' Championship last year. They're probably going to repeat again this year. Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez finishing 1-2, but it was behind them that the real drama unfolded. Ellis, who had a new team sort of arising from the middle of the field to become one of the real contenders in Aston Martin. So they picked up Fernando Alonso, the former world champion, over the off season. He finished third on the podium, which is one of the more surprising results of the day. And at the other end of the spectrum, we had McLaren, who you mentioned, one of the more famous teams in F1 history. Australians obviously well acquainted with them, given Daniel Ricciardo was there for the last few seasons. He was pushed out the door over the off season because I think McLaren thought they should be contending for a world championship, and Ricciardo wasn't the right driver for them. But it looks at these early stages like they were completely wrong with where they assessed that they were, because their two drivers, Oscar Piastri, didn't finish, had engine troubles, and Lando Norris also had trouble, finished 17th. So that is an absolutely heinous start to the year for McLaren. But it's just great. I mean, Ellis, one of the big criticisms of F1 is that the top teams sort of monopolise the game, and there's only sort of 2 or 3 teams that can win each year. But this year it looks absolutely wide open. I mean, we had finishing in the points, we had Aston Martin, Ferrari, Alfa Romeo, Alpine, Williams, Alpha Tauri was just outside the points. Haas had a really good qualifying. So it's going to be a really fascinating year. I've been completely caught up in the Drive to Survive mania. I was up early watching the race this morning. It was a great spectacle. Really encourage everyone who's not currently into the F1 to give it a crack, because it's one of the fastest growing sports in the world at the moment.
Well, you'll be pretty weary-eyed over the next few months trying to keep up with it, Eddie, but that is the way of the world. Let's talk football. Now, one thing that fascinates me, Eddie, is something something that we don't usually see when two rivals come together in sport. You might get one of those teams in really bad form, and you generally don't see an absolute spanking that no one expects. You might get a competitive game that surprises people, but rarely do you get the out-of-form team absolutely putting on a clinic and embarrassing the team that is in form when there's two sides going at it who are historical rivals. Liverpool dismissing Manchester United 7-0, Man United's worst result in 92 years. I'm trying to think of examples to, try and contextualise this a little bit better in other sports, but I actually just can't really think of many, Eddie.
Well, actually, Ellis, the example that immediately came to my mind was that Game 7 that I mentioned previously with the Dallas Mavericks and the Phoenix Suns in the playoffs last year, that they came in as as equals and big rivals, and the Mavericks beat the Suns by about 30 points, I think. So that was the one that immediately came to mind for me. But this is a crazy result. I woke up in the morning and saw this score and couldn't quite believe what I was seeing, because I mean, in terms of their form lines, as you said, Liverpool have been really sluggish this season. They haven't really been able to get things going. The fact that they beat Manchester United this is only their second defeat in 23 games. So for it to come in this manner is stunning. As you said, it's their worst result in over 90 years. I've seen people on Twitter saying that it might be the worst defeat in Manchester United's history, in their entire history, which is again absolutely remarkable. Liverpool were just basically doing whatever they wanted. This is going to live in infamy for quite a while, I would say. I mean, this is not something that Man United are just going to be able to shake off. I mean, you don't give up 7 goals in a rivalry game unless there's something sort of seriously wrong. And can I just say as well, I absolutely love one of the best things about soccer that I absolutely love is when a team has their foot on the throat of the other team, they don't let up. So you didn't see Liverpool go back in their shell. They kept scoring. They kept giving it to their old rival, and it's extremely satisfying. What did you make of it as a Liverpool fan?
Well, I just wanted to throw back to you again, Eddie, because maybe it satisfied you a little more than people might suspect, given that you were on the end of a infamous 7-2 result against Manchester United as a loyal Gunners fan.
Indeed. I remember that vividly. It was absolutely horrible. So I don't envy what United fans are feeling at the moment, but there is a bit of schadenfreude seeing that happen to them. I mean, I think it's fair to say they're probably one of the more disliked clubs in world sport, just because of how big they are. They're sort of on the Dallas Cowboys, Los Angeles Lakers level of enormous fan base. A lot of people who support them from overseas. So I mean, it was immensely satisfying for me. Are Liverpool a chance to make it into Champions League qualification from here?
Oh, it's a hard one, Eddie. I don't think so, and mathematically they're on the rough end of it too, but there's still plenty of games to go, still over 10 games left this season, so you never know. But let's stay in the football world, Eddie, and talk about a side nowhere near as big as Manchester United, but certainly a side that's produced plenty of good Matildas players over the years, and that is Canberra United back at home in the A-League Women's. Now, Eddie, I can't understand this for the life of me. We're talking about a league that's getting towards being fully professional, isn't quite there yet, but infrastructure certainly being bedded in, and we can talk all day about World Cups happening in Australia, etc. So a very good time for women's football, but not for Canberra United today. They're being deducted 3 points for making an invalid substitution, and again, Eddie, it's left pretty much the entire Australian football community scratching their heads.
Yeah, this is a crazy one. You sent me through this one this morning, Ellis, and again, scratching my head as to how this would happen. It kind of feels like I used to play a lot of amateur footy in Adelaide. It kind of feels like the sort of thing that would happen at like a Div 3 or Div 4 amateur footy level. But apparently there was an illegal substitution in the 93rd minute. So Canberra were up 2-1 over Sydney FC. Apparently they made the use of a fourth substitute, which is against the regulations. I don't know what the exact regulation is. I'm not going to pretend to be a football rules expert, but it sounds like whatever happened, it was the wrong thing by Canberra United. They seem to be suggesting that they asked the match officials at the time, and the match officials told them that they could do this. Clearly they couldn't. They've been deducted all their points from the match. Sydney FC were given 3 goals, so they now essentially win the match 3-0. This is just a bizarre one. Like you say, it's not something that's great for the growth of the sport, I don't think. We need to. I think there will be some more facts to come out of this, and we're going to need to keep an eye on this one. I'll definitely be monitoring this to see what comes out of it. I mean, I hope for Canberra United's sake that this was a mistake by a match official rather than a mistake by them. But yeah, what did you make of the whole situation?
Well, just to clarify, the confusion that's arose here, Eddie, is the fact that basically since COVID, the the 3 substitution rules out the window. You can now make multiple substitutions beyond the 3 that you were allowed to make previously, but you do have to make them in a certain period of time, in blocks of time. And if you want to make a standalone substitution beyond the 3 that you're allowed to make, then it has to do with a player that's concussed. It can only be in that vein. So Canberra United making a late substitution, which you would assume, having been made that late, it was probably a little bit needless. But they're appealing the decision here, Eddie, and the only reason I can imagine as to why they're appealing it is because the referee authorised it. So if the referee's authorised it, then maybe they've got a leg to stand on. I don't know. But as you say, we'll keep tabs on it. We'll move along to something that's equally as bizarre, and that's Novak Djokovic's continued battle to try and get into various Western countries, Eddie. Just doesn't seem to be going that well for him. I don't exactly know why for the life of me, because it feels like we've really left COVID behind as a society. But nevertheless, Novak Djokovic continues to have this issue weighing against him, which is the coronavirus and the fact that he's not vaccinated.
Yeah, Ellis, I mean, we have spoken previously about Novak and his, as you say, his struggles to get into the various Western countries at this point. Not going to make any comment on the political implications of all this. As I said previously to you in this on this chat, I just want to see the best players playing in the best tournaments in the world. So purely from that perspective, it's a real shame that Novak can't get into the US. He was applying to gain entry for a couple of ATP events at Indian Wells and Miami, which are two of the sort of the bigger non-majors on the tennis circuit. So from that perspective, really, really disappointing that he's not going to be able to play. He's been playing some really good tennis as usual. Had an absolutely cracker game against Daniel Medvedev the other day. I don't know what's going to happen here and whether he's going to be able to get into the US Open later this year, because it doesn't look like things are going to change. He's applied to the US on the basis that he's already had COVID twice. He hasn't been vaccinated, obviously, but he has had the virus a couple of times. The US has a pretty blanket rule on people not being able to get into the country without vaccination. Again, not going to comment on the rightness or wrongness of that. But yeah, it does seem a little bit ridiculous at this point. We are moving towards a bit of a more of a post-COVID society. So it is strange to me that Novak can't get into these tournaments. I do really want to see him playing. On the plus side, though, Ellis, let me give a shout out to Alex de Minaur, the Australian, who has moved back into the top 20 in the world. He won his maiden ATP 500 tournament in Acapulco overnight, beating Tommy Paul. So what's bad for Novak is good for de Minaur, because he's going to have a real chance to win some of these tournaments. He's beating top 5 players in the world. No Novak equals more chance for Australian Alex de Minaur. So from that perspective, it's a good thing. From the more broad perspective of wanting to see the best players play these tennis events, it's not such a good thing, though.
You're absolutely right. And can I just say, Eddie, I would love to see us play a Mexican Open every single Open that we have in the calendar, because that sombrero hat is just something to absolutely be mesmerised by.
Fantastic, isn't it?
It is. Let's move back home, Eddie. Now, scplaybook.com.au, all over the NRL, as we know. We had an explosive round 1, Eddie, but for me, it was all about the press conferences. 2 press conferences at the complete opposite ends of the ledger. One of those featuring the legendary coach Wayne Bennett, and I've got to say, I've never seen a more smug winning manager front up to the press. What did you make of this?
Wayne Bennett has one of the great facial expressions of all time. I highly encourage everyone to have a look at his press conference after the Dolphins win on the weekend. It was absolutely vintage Wayne Bennett. He was smug. He was smiling. He was taking the mickey out of journalists. It was Wayne Bennett at his peak. And look, Ellis, rightfully so. I mean, I was out and about yesterday afternoon, didn't get to catch the Dolphins game. Someone told me the score and that they were beating the Roosters, and I couldn't quite believe it, honestly. I mean, this is the equivalent for those of us who watch AFL. This is pretty much like the Gold Coast Suns coming in their first game and beating like a Collingwood or a Geelong in their first game as a side, which, for those of us that were around for those Gold Coast early years, that was literally zero chance of happening. So the fact that Wayne Bennett can come in and do this and turn a team of, they've got some stars. Kafusi's an absolute jet, but they really are a team of role players that he's managed to build, and they seem to they work together beautifully. They beat the Roosters quite comfortably in the end. They could have beaten them by more, but yeah, in case we were speaking about the greatest Australian coaches last week, and I sort of posited Ange Postecoglou was potentially the greatest Australian coach going around at this moment. And I think this was Wayne Bennett's resume just being slapped down on the table in front of me right here, because if anyone's got an argument as the best coach in Australia right now, Wayne Bennett has to be right up there.
There we go. He's made the call. Well, in other extraordinary press conference scenarios, I don't know how you get this, Eddie, but with the Manly Sea Eagles beating the Rabbitohs, you got this really strange scenario where we're about to get a press conference underway, and then we just have to hear the winning team song just going off in the backdrop, and it was a really awkward 2 minutes, Eddie. I don't often feel too sorry for an opposition that's lost in round one, but I felt pretty bad for the Rabbitohs, I got to say.
Yeah, this is absolutely classic amateur footy areas here, Ellis. I've lost count of the number of times that, you've had a really dispiriting loss in the wet, at some terrible club out in the northern suburbs or something, and you come in the change and have to listen to the opposing team belt out the song, and this is exactly what happened to the Bulldogs over the weekend. They lost to Manly. It was a great fight. We spoke about Gus Gould last week and what he's done for this club in a short space of time. This is definitely not going to help morale around the Bulldogs. Having to listen to the Manly celebrations as they were trying to conduct a really serious, somber press conference. In the background, you can just hear the Manly guys going nuts. So, this is absolutely classic. We're very much veering into amateur footy areas a lot in this show, which I absolutely love. More of it, please.
Well, Eddie, let's wrap things up by just giving you the opportunity to tell us what scplaybook.com.au is doing right now with round one out the way in the NRL. Must be a huge focus on league at the moment.
Absolutely massive focus, Ellis. We've got a dream team of former Supercoach winners and top 50 finishes and top 10 finishes. They're all sending out some unbelievably good content on scplaybook.com.au. Tim Williams, who was the runner-up in 2019, he's dropping stuff everywhere. He's put up his team reveal. So if you are looking for a chance to improve your Supercoach NRL team, we've got all of that. Plus we've got the AFL stuff as well. Obviously we're less than 2 weeks away from the AFL kicking off as well. We've got plenty of AFL stuff. If you're into your Supercoach, this is really the best time of the year. I'm absolutely loving it. Couldn't stop refreshing my phone over the weekend, looking at Supercoach scores, thinking about who I'm going to trade out, who I'm going to trade in. It really is the best time of the year.
There we have it. Well, Eddie Dads from scplaybook.com.au. Enjoy being in the Outback after being in Canada for a couple of months there, and we'll speak to you next week. All the best.
Sounds great.